Why is it that sometimes the lazy one ends up being successful while the hard worker struggles and fails? It feels unfair. It feels upside down. We grow up with the idea that effort always leads to reward, that if you work harder, you'll climb higher. But reality often tells a different story. We see people who barely lift a finger, who seem careless and even indifferent, suddenly stumble into success. And then we see others, sweating, sacrificing, doing everything right, only to end up frustrated and exhausted. So what's going on here? Is life unfair? Or are we missing something deeper? Krishnamurti would probably ask us to slow down before jumping to conclusions. He often challenged the way we look at success, failure, effort, and even laziness. He said that we live in patterns, in conditioning, and we measure ourselves against those patterns. Hard work is one such pattern. From childhood we're told, work hard, be disciplined, and you will succeed. But when that doesn't happen, we either blame ourselves or we blame life. What if the whole idea of hard work leading to success is not the full picture? Think about what hard work really means. Many people work hard at jobs they hate. They put in long hours, they follow the rules, they grind day after day. But is that work aligned with their nature, their curiosity, their intelligence? Or is it simply mechanical repetition, fueled by fear and ambition? Hard work without clarity often becomes struggle, and struggle does not guarantee success. Now think about the so-called lazy person. From the outside, they may look unmotivated. They don't follow the same grind. They don't sacrifice in the same way. But sometimes their laziness is actually a refusal to conform blindly. They might reject meaningless effort. They might conserve their energy until they find something that truly sparks their interest. And when they do, their actions are no longer mechanical. They act with a kind of natural flow. They see shortcuts that others miss. They are not bound by the idea that success only comes from suffering. Krishnamurti once said that when the mind is quiet and free from conditioning, it acts with intelligence. A person who appears lazy may simply be waiting until their action comes from that intelligence rather than from fear or social pressure. On the other hand, the hard-working one might be trapped in a cycle of effort that is disconnected from awareness. They are running harder and harder, but on the wrong track. Think of it like rowing a boat. If you row with all your strength but in the wrong direction, you won't reach the shore. But if someone else takes the time to watch the currents, to feel the wind, and then rows lightly but in the right direction, they'll arrive faster with less effort. The difference is not effort versus laziness. The difference is awareness versus blindness. Success, if we can even call it that, doesn't come only from how much effort we put in. It often comes from insight, from seeing clearly, from understanding ourselves and the world around us. Hard work without understanding is like pushing against a locked door. It only exhausts us. But when there is clarity, sometimes just a gentle push is enough to open the door. So the real question isn't why the lazy succeed and the hardworking fail. The question is, what is the quality of the mind behind the action? Is it a mind driven by fear, ambition, comparison? Or is it a mind that sees, that understands, that acts with intelligence? Many of us confuse busyness with purpose. We fill our days with activity, but deep down, we may not know why we're doing it. We work hard, but we're driven by the desire to prove ourselves, to meet expectations, to gain approval. This kind of effort doesn't necessarily lead to fulfillment or success. It leads to stress, burnout, and disappointment. The so-called lazy one might avoid this trap simply because they don't care to follow the rules. They're not easily pressured by society's expectations. Sometimes they drift, yes, but sometimes in that drifting they stumble upon a fresh idea, a unique approach, a path no one else saw. They may act only when necessary, but when they do, their action is precise, efficient, and effective. Krishnamurti often reminded us that true action comes from silence, not from compulsion. When the mind is quiet, not constantly pushing and struggling, it sees more clearly, and from that clarity, action arises naturally. That action may look effortless, but it has great power. Maybe that's why the lazy succeed. Because they wait until action is natural, rather than forced. This doesn't mean we should become lazy in the ordinary sense. It It doesn't mean lying in bed all day or escaping responsibility. It means questioning the very nature of effort. Are we working hard because we're afraid? Afraid of failure, of poverty, of not being enough? Or are we moving because we see something true, something meaningful, something that calls us? When action comes from fear, it drains us. When action comes from clarity, it energizes us. That's the hidden difference. And maybe that's why hard work doesn't always pay off, while the so-called lazy one sometimes thrives. So let's look at this more closely. We often assume that hard work is always virtuous, that if we're working tirelessly, we must be on the right path. But virtue is not in the quantity of effort, it's in the quality of awareness. You can be extremely hardworking and still be blind. You can be endlessly busy and still be empty. And you can be outwardly lazy, yet inwardly alert, watching, learning, waiting, until the right action reveals itself. This is where Krishnamurti's teaching becomes radical. He invites us to see that society glorifies effort because effort keeps the machine running. Schools, companies, governments, all reward the obedient worker who doesn't question, who keeps grinding. But that doesn't necessarily mean fulfillment for the individual. It means continuation of the system. If you want true success, not just money, but inner freedom, you cannot simply accept the formula of hard work equals reward. You have to discover your own way of living and acting. Think of all the entrepreneurs, artists, inventors who changed the world. Many of them were not the hardest workers in the conventional sense. They didn't sit at a desk for 16 hours a day, following instructions. What they had was clarity of vision. They could see what others missed. And when you see clearly, action flows naturally, almost effortlessly. That's why sometimes their success looks unfair to those grinding day and night. But the truth is, it's not about the amount of sweat. It's about the depth of insight. Now let's be careful here. This isn't an excuse for procrastination. Waiting for insight is not the same as wasting your life. Krishnamurti never suggested we should drift without responsibility. What he suggested is that action without understanding is meaningless, and understanding cannot be forced. If you're constantly working, constantly struggling, your mind has no space to observe. It's noisy, it's restless. In that noise, clarity cannot appear. But when there is silence, when the mind stops chasing reward and fearing failure, then real perception becomes possible. So maybe the lazy succeed because they allow that space. They are not constantly filling their life with effort for effort's sake. They may appear unproductive, but inside they may be more receptive. And when the right moment comes, they act. Their action seems small, but it carries power because it comes from seeing clearly. Imagine two people planting a tree. One digs furiously, sweating, struggling, planting in dry soil without water, without care. The other waits until the season is right, finds fertile ground, and plants with minimal effort. Which tree will grow stronger? Hard work doesn't guarantee growth. Intelligence does. Awareness does. Krishnamurti would say, do not glorify either laziness or hard work. Both are labels. What matters is understanding. If you are lazy because you are avoiding life, escaping, then that laziness will not lead to anything but emptiness. But if you are not working in the conventional sense because you are observing, questioning, understanding, then when you do act, your action has meaning. Similarly, if you are hardworking but blind, you are only exhausting yourself. But if your effort comes from clarity, it is no longer struggle. It is play. It is creation. It is natural. So maybe we need to ask ourselves, are we working out of fear or out of love? Out of comparison or out of insight? Are we being lazy out of apathy or out of patience? This is the deeper investigation. Success and failure, in the worldly sense, are almost secondary. What really matters is whether our action arises from awareness. This is liberating when you see it clearly, because it means your life is not a simple equation of work harder, succeed more. It means you can stop punishing yourself when effort doesn't lead to results. You can stop envying the so-called lazy who seem to thrive. Instead, you can turn inward and ask, what is the quality of my mind when I act? Am I acting mechanically, Or am I acting with understanding? Krishnamurti once said, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." Think about that in the context of hard work. Society may reward endless effort, but if that effort is in service of something meaningless, is it really success? On the other hand, if you refuse to participate in the meaningless and instead act only when there is truth in it, society may call you lazy. But in reality, you may be living more intelligently than the so-called hardworking. So the next time you see a lazy person succeed, don't rush to envy or judgment. Ask yourself, did their success come from luck or from a kind of natural intelligence that refused to be trapped in blind effort? And when you see a hardworking person fail, ask, was their effort guided by clarity or by fear and conditioning? These questions are more important than the outcome itself, because in the end, the point is not to imitate the lazy or the hardworking. The point is to free yourself from the pattern of blind effort and blind avoidance, to live with awareness, to act when there is clarity, and to rest when there is not. From that balance, life unfolds more naturally. So why do the lazy sometimes succeed and the hardworking sometimes fail? Because success is not about effort alone. It's about awareness. It's about seeing. And in that seeing, action is neither hard nor lazy. It is simply right. In the end, it's not about being lazy or hardworking. It's about acting with clarity instead of fear. Success comes when effort flows naturally, without struggle or pretense. When you see clearly, you no longer chase success. You live intelligently, and from that intelligence, the right results follow.